Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us as we have a lot to get to on this pod as SMU football is now in full offseason mode. The transfers are in, the players are back at workouts. What to expect over the next couple of months as they get ready for spring ball. We'll break down what we're kind of watching as this next phase of the offseason really gets underway for the Mustangs and Rhett Lashlee and company. And we'll also talk a touch of recruiting, what's going on right now. And of course, we'll preview a big SMU basketball game on the road this weekend at Louisville. We do all that and more and introduce a new sponsor of the show on this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast that starts right now.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody.
1, 2, 3, let me go.
A lot to get to on this edition of the podcast. So happy Friday, everyone. So glad you're joining us on this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. And we are going to talk a lot about the offseason for SMU football. If you're following Rhett Lashlee on social media, he's all over the place. He's over doing recruiting visits. He's down at the Senior Bowl. He's making in-home visits and all of those things that coaches do, in-home being at the schools and things like that. But lots going on, too, on campus for SMU football as Sean Griswold and the SMU strength and conditioning staff starts getting the Mustangs ready for this college football season that, believe it or not, guys, will be here before we know it. And we are so lucky to be joined by a new sponsor of On the Pony Express and a person that I know very well. I have had many great dealings with him, and he's been there for me, Michelle, and Jack every step of the way through our real estate journey now as a family. And that's Anthony Sedano of Dave Perry Miller Real Estate. We're really excited to welcome Anthony Sedano as a sponsor here at On the Pony Express. Anthony lives right around the corner from SMU. And so we've been talking about this for a bit now. He's down at the Boulevard with us. He's hanging out at some of the games. We bring him with us. Him and his fiance come hang out with us. And, they want to be a part of Dallas and SMU and embracing that. And for Anthony, this was just such a perfect fit for us when we sat down and talked about it. We've obviously had him as our realtor now for a few years and helped us get into our first house, has helped us navigate an incredibly difficult real estate market to deal with. We've leased with him, we've bought with him, we've gone through the selling process with him, and he's been there to offer sound advice and guidance throughout every step. And so when I thought about bringing him on as a sponsor, it didn't take long for us to hammer out what we wanted that to look like. And so we're really excited about this. You guys will get to know Anthony Sedano at our events, at our different podcasts that we do, as we'll showcase some of the homes that he's got listed. We'll showcase him. He's a very outgoing, personable guy, former D1 athlete, and has spent a lot of time in Dallas building up his real estate network. And so we're very excited to have Anthony Sedano partner with us here at On the Pony Express. And we hope you guys, if you're in the real estate market and you're looking to do something, maybe it's buying a home, maybe it's selling, maybe it's leasing, maybe it's buying an investment property, Anthony can help you through all of that. And you can reach out to him at 904-537-3888. That's 904-537-3888. You can also email him, Anthony Sedano, Cedano, at dpmre.com. We'll have all of that included on the podcast episode description. And he's got a great website, anthonysedano.com, where you can go and you can fill out your information and go through the market and see it right there on his website, kind of what's going on, filter it out. It's like your own Zillow, but working with your own realtor. So we're really excited to tell you Anthony's story and all of the different ways he's got his hands on the pulse of the real estate market, especially here in DFW. So whether you're from out of town and looking to relocate, certainly a option for you in the real estate market here in Dallas. Our friend Anthony Sedano. Really excited to have him on the pod. So we will do a lot of things, and it'll be less time consuming. Of course, we try to work in our ad reads, but we like to not have them dominate the show, of course. And Anthony knows that. So we've got some fun content planned for you guys to kind of help you guys learn a little bit about what's going on, but also showcase him and what he can do to help you and your family. And whether you're just getting started on your real estate journey and you want to connect with somebody who, can help you get to that next phase where you are buying or you're transacting and things like that, Anthony Sedano could do that. So excited to have Anthony with us on the pod and supporting us as a proud partner of On the Pony Express. Proud partnership, SMU's players with Sean Griswold. That is certainly one of those key pieces when SMU brings players, whether it be high school recruits, whether it be transfers onto campus. They, I hear the expression a lot, get them with Grizz. We can't wait to get them with Grizz. And, for a large part of SMU's run under Rhett Lashlee, they have finished so well. And there is a new challenge, no doubt, for Sean Griswold, and that's having these guys ready to go for a game one that is a conference game. Rhett Lashlee was on ACC Network talking about that earlier this week and just what it gives the guys as far as extra juice to get going for that Labor Day night game against FSU in again, just, before you know it. And, with that, you're seeing a lot of the early goings of those workouts. You're seeing some of the newcomers, whether they be high school enrollees, whether they be new additions from the transfer portal, they're getting with Grizz and they're developing their plan for the offseason. They're taking a look at, okay, here's where your body's at. Here's where we need you to get so that you're like a vehicle. It's a very easy comparison to make and kind of connection there where you're trying to get them revved up, ready to go for the season, and also be able to withstand the beatings of a college football season. And that is the number one thing that we're going to be watching over these next several months ahead of fall camp is what does Sean Griswold do with some of these players on SMU's team that have come into the program and need to add weight or need to add this or that to their repertoire to be the most successful player they can be. Like you look at what SMU got in terms of a Kendrick Raphael, and his explosiveness and ability to tote the rock at the ACC level. How does Sean Griswold work with somebody like that who's been through the grind of an ACC season, but at the same time, wants to reach his next level? He wants to get to that 1,000-yard season. He wants to be a little bit more explosive in the run game. He's certainly got it down in that ability to catch the ball out of the backfield and do some of those fun things. But what does he do to, get him ready for that final curtain call and being ready to be the man back there with Kevin Jennings at the quarterback position in that backfield? Kendrick Raphael is going to be the main focal point of this running attack. Dramico Green, we know the expectations that are there for him long term. We know that he is now stepping into a spot where he can be that number two back, that very clear cut number two back. And as you look at what Chunky, as they call him, has done over the course of his not even a year yet on SMU's campus, and how he's dealt with some adversity, whether it be an injury late in fall camp or the death of a family member during the season, he's now got a clear path where he can chase something and he knows he's got an opportunity to go and get it. And you see him have this full off season. I think when we see Dramico Green and just kind of looking through, and believe it or not, I don't do a great job of categorizing all of my pictures from our great friend Matt Visinski through the course of a season. I probably get about half of them labeled and we end up using them. But in the offseason, I like to kind of clean them up, make sure they all are labeled. But I already noticed a couple of Chunky. I'm like, just thinking about where he's going to be come spring ball. How much more weight are they going to put on him? And then you fast forward that after we see whatever that looks like in the spring. And is this going to be that 220, 225 pound back that SMU envisions, having that explosiveness that he showed in the bowl game? You guys got a chance to see it in some limited carries, and he should have gotten more, but that's a different story. He really has that ability to carry that weight well because he's long, he's got a great frame. And I think that's something that when you look at probably one of the biggest offseason goals for Sean Griswold and this staff is getting somebody like D'Amico Green revved up and ready to go from a pure body makeup, right? Like having the weight to withstand the punishment, being a little bit more physically imposing from a strength perspective. Those are all things that you balance, making sure he's got the explosiveness that he needs to, again, carry the rock as many times as SMU needs him to, whether that ends up being a feature role if they don't have Kendrick Raphael for some reason, or whether it's, hey, he's the hot hand, let's keep riding him, and we need him. And that's kind of where I think that's the next step for D'Amico Green, is getting ready for that, because it is probably a shock to the system when you're looking at, and SMU did a good job of this at times this year, where they were able to string together some 9, 10, 11 play drives. Well, if you're out there and you're that guy that SMU's leaning on, especially with the way the running back room is set up right now, you're looking at a more of a physically beat down that is going to be there, whether it be pass protection, whether it be running the football. Those are all things that players have to be wary of in the offseason and preparing for. And that's something that Sean Griswold and his staff are working towards with Chunky. So they'll get the freshman later this summer. So that's another conversation. And Derek McFall is going to play, slot. He's going to play running back. He's going to kind of do a bunch of different things. But, this two-headed monster of Kendrick Raphael and D'Amico Green, they've got to be revved up and ready to go. And spring is also important for them, because on one hand, you have one guy who's got to be learning the playbook and earning his reps. Another one, just continue to pick up where he left off as far as learning the playbook and doing all of those things. But you want him to get that live action behind this offensive line that is going to feature a couple of new faces. And, the thumbnail on this video, if you clicked on it on YouTube, in all likelihood, the full podcast at least, PJ Williams. PJ Williams is a prime example of following a plan that this staff had in place for him when they brought him in. And he was somebody that you completely looked at and you said, okay, this is kind of a flyer, former top 100 guy who kind of ran into, some troubles at A&M. Now he is, I'm really excited to see what PJ looks like going into this final year, because the funny thing about PJ is he's, first of all, great guy, great young man now. And so you get like a little bit of that charm. And so you don't always think of him as this like absolutely imposing figure because he is so nice. But you have somebody who is going to be very much in the NFL draft conversation. And so it's imperative that all of the things that SMU can do to have him ready to go from a physical perspective and making sure he's healthy this year is really important. And I think he kind of gutted it out at times during the course of the season through different things, like a lot of the offensive linemen did for SMU. But with so much change on the left side of the offensive line, it is really important that he is ready to go. And he is that kind of focal point of what the SMU strength and conditioning program looks like. Like when people look up and they say, oh, wow, what are the success stories? That's a guy that you immediately point to in the trenches, and especially on the offensive line. You say, man, PJ's one that's gotten it done. Look at how he looks, because he has one of those bodies that is so, I think, physically impressive that, I mean, he kind of, if you're looking for a comp, and I know Trent Williams is a left tackle, but I kind of see a little bit of Trent Williams and PJ Williams. Like he doesn't always look like he's carrying all this weight, but he is. And so SMU forming that up into something that's even more impressive, I think, is one just minor thing that I'm watching for in this offseason is what level of PJ Williams we see, because SMU got a really good one this year. I think he's only going to be even better next year for the Mustangs. And he's going to have to anchor that offensive line that when I look at the key storylines going into this offseason, one key storyline in particular is that left side of the SMU offensive line. You have your left tackle, Savion Byrd, who's gone. You have your left guard, Logan Parr, who's gone. you have a rotational guy in Nate Anderson who's gone, and you have a returning player in Andrew Chamblee who has played a number of snaps, and he's played kind of a swing tackle type of role where he's stepped in at various points for players. And then you have Draymond Odoms, the former blue chip, highly rated guy. And then you have so much talent coming in this freshman offensive line class. So when you look at the left tackle spot, I mean, we were doing the way too early depth chart. And the good thing about left tackle is you could kind of sit there and say, okay, this has got to be Andrew Chamblee and it's got to be Draymond Odoms battling this out. Well, as we'll get into positional previews here later on, man, you see some of the videos that are coming out of like a Max Wright. I mean, I'm telling you, I texted Hayden Howerton about it, some of his sets and things like that. Now, I think he's got to get a bigger physically, and from a just size strength perspective, he's 6'8". Those videos, though, his quickness, his agileness is really, really impressive. And you see him, and then you see an Evan Goodwin and his hulking frame. Those are guys that, because of their size, they could play. They could be in that Abel Hoopy, Draymond Odoms kind of world where they end up being the ones that play some snaps on the offensive line this year to kind of help these guys, whether it be the left tackle, whether it be left guard, or whether it be another spot, just get a breather. That's important because I see, a Papunga Katoa and a Drew Evers, two others that are enrolling early. Those are two key pieces that, truthfully, I feel like Toa is going to be an interior guy, and his body continues to develop, and he continues to put the work in to lose weight and get that body right. And I think now SMU having their hands on him is going to be kind of a perfect fit in that regard. But then when you look at Drew Evers, who is physically impressive, but I think you want to see him take, like, Drew is, I think the intriguing thing about Drew is he can play all 5 spots, most likely in some way, shape, or form. So where does he end up? And then you look at him and you say, okay, he's a big kid already, but how do you take that body? And is there almost a little bit of baby fat in there, which is crazy to kind of think about, because if you project out long term, and I try, and sometimes offensive line is incredibly difficult to project from a developmental standpoint, physically and all these things. I look at Drew Evers, though, and you're almost going to look at him, I think, one day, and you're going to be like, man, this guy is like not a bodybuilder as far as he's going to be ripped and things like that. But his body, I just think, screams that they're going to take him and they're going to drop some fat off of him a little bit. And I'm not saying he is fat. I'm saying like baby fat. And as he physically matures over the course of these next 6-7 months to fall camp, that transformation is going to be so intriguing for me, because Drew, I know, and this offensive line class is really kind of all locked in on this. They're going to be locked in on their nutrition, their training, what they can do to be ready to push come fall camp and kind of lay that foundation in the spring. But really, it's a long-term push over these next 6 to 7 months for this entire group, outside of Sam Utu, who gets here in the summer. So that group is going to be intriguing. They just are, because they all have different levels of polish. They all have different levels of physical traits and developed traits as a whole. This offensive line class is so much fun. And as somebody who has watched SMU address the offensive line position a little bit more in the past than they obviously did in this transfer portal cycle, which was zero goose egg, I sat here and said, okay, there's got to be one coming, right? They brought Daniel Cruz in. Maybe they'll get him. But here's the thing. They feel really nice about what they've got in the group that they have. And so whether that is just a touch on the, I don't want to say reckless, but like a touch on the reckless side, when you have an Andrew Chamblee and a Draymond Odoms at left tackle, when you have an Alex Woods and an Abel Hoopy at left guard battling it out, and assuming those are kind of the guys in there, could you have added one more that at least you say, okay, we get brought in a veteran offensive lineman, we're fine. That allows us to, for sure, redshirt maybe every single one of the freshmen, which, hey, look, in this day and age is not a bad thing with the way SMU's kind of deployed linemen at times. But can we do that? Can we get away with that and then have that group kind of, be back a year in a sense, but also get the development? I kind of thought that would be something that they would do. They did not. But whenever I ask people about this offensive line, they are like, we love everything we've got going on here, and we think we can get it done. And that is probably on offense. If you consider known commodities, Kevin Jennings, Kendrick Raphael, even the younger players that you have at the wide receiver position, which is a fun group, and the new additions in Jalen Hale and Yannick Smith and Yamir Knight coming back, you really sit there and you say, okay, can't wait to see the tight ends they brought in because they're I think incredibly intriguing. But I think all eyes are on the offensive line, and in particular the left side, because this is a group that has to be ready to rock and roll against an imposing Florida State front. That's Florida State's always going to have athletes and size up front, and SMU is going to have to be ready to rock. So offseason preview, goals, storylines, I think so much of it centers around the offensive line because it's intriguing in the sense that they didn't add any from the transfer portal, but you see the vision and you see what they're building long term. It could be very special. So it's an exciting time in that regard. Before we go any further, and we'll go to wide outs and tight ends a little bit and talk about them, I do want to remind you guys about our friends at Socorro Tequila as well. And Socorro Tequila is a great partner of ours. They are continuing to give you guys incredible award-winning tequila, agave yeast and water. That's what it's made of. Make sure you guys go to SocorroTequila.com. You can also click the link in the podcast episode description below and go right into their store and get free shipping on 3 bottles or more with our friends at Socorro Tequila. So make sure you guys check them out and also visit our friends at Los Charros Tex-Mex. They have the smoker. They have an incredible spread for you guys to heat you guys up this weekend, whether you're going in there to watch SMU Louisville on one of their TVs or just going in to hang out with the fam and get a great meal. You can try their tortilla soup that they've thrown out on social. We're going to announce very soon here our next event at Los Charros with Socorro and get that all lined up in February. But do want to make sure you guys are going in there and getting that free bowl of queso when you mention On the Pony Express with our friends at Los Charros. So make sure you guys visit our friends at Los Charros Tex-Mex Smokehouse right there on Hillcrest Avenue inside the Graduate Hotel. And again, so easy. You throw the keys to valet, swing in there. I was actually telling Anthony Sedano this morning, hey, you can just go in there. If you have a meeting around SMU, just throw your keys to valet, grab coffee. They've got breakfast, lunch, dinner, do whatever you want. That's what they've got going on there. Our friends at Los Charros, and have a Socorro margarita while you're there. Continuing on with the wide receiver tight end group. The wide receiver group, I almost think offseason preview goals here is very straightforward because you have a very just bland group of things that need to happen. And that is the new guys, Yannick Smith, Jalen Hale, Theo Mellon-Orstrom, Randy Pittman, Trey Jackson. They all got to come in and they got to catch a million balls from Kevin Jennings, and they've got to get that timing down, and they've got to work their route tree, and they've got to work their playbook. Those are all players that have been in the college weight room for a while now. They're full-blown college athletes. That should not be any sort of change developmentally, things like that. Where I think it gets interesting is at the wide receiver position, and to an extent with Zach Turner, is what do you see out of these guys as early enrollees? When you get a Ja'Kai Anderson in there who's super explosive, when you get an Algernon Miles in there who has the frame that is so impressive, how do those guys immediately look going into this spring? Because I would argue that the wide receiver position should be one of the most easily accessible positions to get on the field right away. like if you're a dude, you're going to shine, you're going to eventually force your way onto the field. And with this being Kevin Jennings last year, SMU brings in 2 veteran wide receivers. We'll talk about the tight end separate because that's just a whole different beast with what they lost. But you have so much young talent too, and a Jalen Cooper and a Dalen Singleton and a Carterius Brown and an Isaiah Robertson. What does all that look like? Because Isaiah Robertson missed the entire year with an injury. Carterius Brown redshirted. Jalen Cooper should have gotten more snaps. We know that, but there's also, a trust thing going on with Romello being out there and the way he started the season. But this coming year, and maybe it'll be a sign of things to come in the spring, is kind of similar to the offensive line. Like, how much trust do you have in these wide receivers to go out there and just go right away and work with Kevin Jennings and know that, hey, there might be mistakes here and there, but they're going to be made fast. They're going to be made and corrected, because I think this group of wide receiver they brought in, they do have a good feel for, smarts and things like that. I do think it's a more cerebral group than what we've seen in the past. But at the same time, you also have a group that's been here and is paying their dues and is getting themselves ready for this final year with Kevin, and they've made waves in that regard. And so, how is that balance going into spring? What opportunities are out there for some of these players to jump in on and get and earn? That's something I'm watching really closely. And for an offseason goal, if you want to circle one, for one of these players, I think when you identify Jalen Cooper and Isaiah Robertson and Carterius Brown on the outside, because you do have Ymir Knight back. So I'm not trying to slight Dalen Singleton here, but you do have a wide open competition on the outside. Even though you bring in Yannick Smith, you have Link Rhodes back, you bring in Jalen Hale, you have roles and opportunities available on the outside. Those guys taking the next steps and grabbing those is going to be something really interesting to watch, because even Yannick Smith, look, I mean, he's only a year older than Jalen Cooper. I mean, it's just facts. He's a true junior. Jalen Cooper's going to be a true sophomore. Dalen Singleton's going to be a true sophomore. So there's really not this big discrepancy between what these guys are age-wise. We've kind of seen that in the past, and at certain positions, you'll see, oh, wow, all right, this guy is, when you compare a Marquise White to a Jalen Shivers, Marquise White's going to be 25 or is 25 years old. Jalen Shivers is 19 or so. That's a gap, guys, at defensive end, regardless of if they play bandit or strong side at defensive end. That is a major gap. Yannick Smith has played 2 years of college football and been productive at East Carolina, not to an elite level, but productive. Jalen Cooper got his feet wet as a true freshman last year at SMU, which says a lot. He should be ready to take that next step and be kind of, when we leave spring, I look at wide receiver 1 and I'm sitting there saying, got to be liking what I'm seeing out of Jalen Cooper. And I think the goal of spring has to be, man, get the hype train going on Isaiah Robertson as well, because he really was having such a great fall camp. He was such a revelation, with you already knowing kind of where Jalen Cooper was going into fall camp. Now you have Isaiah Robertson, who was having a good camp, and he gets hurt. So he's got to be available, but there was a lot of buzz building around him as well. So all of that is something to watch. The receiver position for the next 3 years, just even if they just stop recruiting right now, is going to be pretty exciting to watch, I think, with who they've got on campus and who they have coming to enroll this summer, if they're not already on campus. Just that whole group, fun to watch. Theo Mellon-Orstrom, Randy Pittman, getting them into 12 personnel sets and seeing what those roles look like, because there is a thought that SMU is going to be able to go a little bit faster when they need to, because they have 2 players that can stay in and block if need be. They have 2 players that can contribute in the run game blocking, and they have 2 players that are more than capable of catching the football. And Randy Pittman has experience at the Big 12 level. He has experience in the ACC. Theo Mellon-Orstrom is kind of a freakazoid, looks the part of somebody who could really emerge, having moved from the SEC to the ACC. And in this offense, I think having two guys out here that, I mean, just talking with a couple people, really look like they can move around and move around at a high level. Getting them ready to rock with Kevin Jennings is super important. Speaking of important, before this weekend, SMU Basketball takes on Louisville. So before that happens, make sure you guys get with our friends at Sportsmo. Download the Sportsmo app today and start making your micro donations to support SMU men's basketball or women's basketball if you want. You can make these micro pledges and they can go right into the student athlete benefit fund, and it's tax deductible. So make sure you guys check that out. They're now in the college basketball space. Support our friends at Sportsmo. Download the Sportsmo app today, and you can do that in the link just below this podcast episode. So make sure you guys check out our friends at Sportsmo today.
College basketball hits different with Sportsmo. You tap, they score. You pledge, they drop a three. You give as a group, they win as a team. At this point, you're not watching a game, you're in it. Download the app, fund your wallet, and get in the game. Download Sportsmo. Power the play.
And that's right. And also do want to remind you guys as well about our friends at StatusJet. StatusJet.com can get you guys all the details on how to book your travel to the Louisville game. If you want to do it last second, you can. All you need is a credit card. Throw it down. There's no membership fees. There's no upfront costs. Just book with our friends at StatusJet. Head up to watch Louisville. Do it last minute. Get a group together and just go. Rip the Band-Aid off, guys. Go for it. That is where you could be Saturday morning in Louisville, Kentucky, watching the Mustangs take on the Cardinals in a major matchup. Get a discount on a round-trip flight with our friends at StatusJet, and also start looking ahead for those trips to Florida State, Louisville, and Notre Dame as well for football season. Get to planning on that, as those are some interesting trips that StatusJet will take care of all of you guys with. So appreciate their support of On the Pony Express. We get to the defensive side, and this is a group that, with what they brought in, it is a lot of veteran players. This is not really, like, outside of Caden Marshall, this is not really a group that you sit here and say, oh, well, that's a DJ Warner who's going to be a developmental guy this year and then, emerge as a starter years down the road. You have an Ira Singleton who's kind of in that role as, going to have an opportunity to get on the field as a pass rusher, but he's also played a ton of snaps in college football over the last 2 years for USF. You see these guys that SMU brought in, and there really isn't much of that. Okay, all right, let's get a developmental guy. No, it's all about win now. And when you look at the issues that SMU faced on the back end last year, and not to go right to that, but the communication, and also having I think a difference maker at nickel with Jarvis Lee and what he was able to do at USF last year. His film is terrific. Get him in. Obviously, make sure he's wrapped in bubble wrap, because we kind of said this, and looking back now, this is one of those pieces that didn't fall into place for this SMU defense, and it was nickel last year. Lamondrick Spencer got hurt. Jaden Miller-Jones was involved. Kyron Chambers was involved. They moved Ahmad Moses there. They eventually moved Deuce Hardman there. They did all sorts of things to try and fix the nickel spot, because when the nickel in this defense isn't what it needs to be, you can see opposing offenses exploit it. And whether it makes other players look like they're getting exploited or it's just the nickel getting exploited, those are all things that, watching this SMU defense, I think everybody now realizes how good CJ Sanders was and how much he brought to this SMU team. So when you look at adding Jarvis Lee, immediately, even if, and this would have been a stretch, but I just believe this, that it's such an important position, that could have been it. And I would have said, okay, well, they have issues as far as depth goes, number one, but they have Tyron Polley back there. Okay, they'll trust Jalen Moses and Sile Reyes and Kadavian Dodson-Walker and kind of that group of younger safeties. And, maybe at that point, Kyron Chambers would have stayed or something. but at least they got Jarvis Lee. And at least then they could move around a LaModric Spencer or move around some of these different guys and get them on the field in different spots that maybe impact the secondary in a more positive way. Those are all things that I would have been at least telling you guys, while also saying, what the hell, they only added one guy in the secondary. But that's how important Jarvis Lee is. And so now getting him and getting Jimmy Wyrick, the UTSA safety, who's going to be one of those leaders back there in the secondary, getting JT Thomas lined up and ready to rock from A&M, those are all important things and pieces, because you're going to also have, a new starter in Tyron Polley. You're going to have some new blood in that secondary that sees a significant jump in snaps, like a Sile Reyes, like a Jalen Moses, Davian Dotson-Walker, all those types of players. And then you get to corner, and will a Javion Holiday take that next step? And he didn't redshirt. I don't think he did. I actually am 99% sure he did not. He ended up playing on special teams. I got to catch myself on that. But you have these players that are he didn't redshirt. You have these players that are ready to take that next step for this SMU defense. Zay Gentry, will he be ready in spring? Will he be more watching and kind of ready to go in fall camp? They got to be careful with him because he's so high upside. That's something you don't want to mess with and kind of ruin, at least in my opinion. So that's something to watch. You have Deuce Gilbert in as a corner who is an early enrollee. And from there, I think communication as a whole in this group, and they've revamped some of the staffing and some of the different coaches involved with this group. Some of that is all in a spot now where you're saying, okay, you have Ricky Hundley with corners. You have Warren Messer with the nickels. You have Kyle Ward with the safeties. You have Scott Simons as the defense coordinator watching over the entire group, but also, his experience with the safeties. This is a really good situation that they've now kind of just tweaked just enough, right? To, get these guys in certain rooms and get them in certain situations so that they're a little bit more on the same page. And I think, we saw the difference without CJ Sanders. I think we saw a difference without a Jonathan McGill, kind of super cerebral, smart player back there on the back end of the secondary. And so there were communication breakdowns. This year, I think we see less of that. And you don't have to go much farther than looking at the film in the bowl game and saying, hey, guys, this is what we can be if we play smart, if we play the right way, if we play loose, have fun, but also keep in mind what we have to get done and accomplish by keeping guys in front of us and things like that. So the competition here is kind of secondary to a lot of the mental things that need to go on for this SMU secondary, at least from my angle. Speaking of something that's secondary, sometimes buying a car can feel like a secondary thing, and instead of an incredible experience when you feel first, when you feel like a priority. That's what our friends at the Thomas Auto Group take care of. Learn about the Thomas Promise today by heading up 75 to McKinney. Yes, the roads are de-iced just enough for you to go up there safely. You can drive up there, visit their Ford, Subaru, Volkswagen, or Mitsubishi dealership, and check out their line of vehicles, whether it be new or pre-owned. Go to thomasautogroup.com to browse their selection and mention On the Pony Express, and you will get employee pricing on new and pre-owned vehicles. I've got to take Michelle's car in. We've got to get some tires on that thing. We're going with our friends at the Thomas Auto Group. So excited to report back on our service experience, which I know is going to be top-notch as well. So appreciate all of you guys for supporting Thomas Auto Group, checking through their cars and seeing what maybe might be yours just in time for next football season. So check out their selection and support Brandon Thomas and his family and SMU alum with the Thomas Auto Group. And also Corporate Magic. They continue to deliver high-level events for their clients across the globe. They put on events that you would have no idea that you are watching a Corporate Magic event, but they are some of the most incredible events or experiences that you maybe have seen or been a part of or heard about. And so whether it's a national sales meeting, whether it is a global broadcast that is seen by millions, Corporate Magic has done it all. So visit corporatemagic.com today. They're proudly based here in DFW. They're proud supporters of SMU. got a lot of fun things planned with them over the course of the next year or so to see what we can come up with as far as the event space goes. But our friends at Corporate Magic will deliver at a high level for you guys. So reach out to them today, corporatemagic.com, and just see if your company might fit well with them as far as planning your next event. So appreciate our friends at Corporate Magic for sponsoring the show as well. The defensive line and the front seven in particular, I feel really good about this bunch. And I think in today's day and age of the portal, you would always want to say, okay, well, let's go get one more, right? You would want to go get one more defensive tackle, always. Anybody would be on board with that. But what they have here is a really good versatile group. This is once again lining up to be another, I think kind of stellar group that we're going to see a lot of different alignments out of. We're going to see a lot of different personnel groupings that I think people maybe don't realize, especially once Tavion Atkinson gets here this summer and comes in from the junior college ranks. When you add in some of these freshmen to the mix, a Keith Doty who gets here this summer. They do have 3 of the 4 defensive linemen here in Hudson Woods, Amontre Harris, and Dakota Dixon. All great things there because that's, again, kind of that next step for SMU in terms of transforming this group. I really think it's an interesting piece here where they're going to have a pretty impressive group that Calvin Thibodeau, Sam Dunham, they're going to Demerick Gary, they're all going to be able to kind of play around with and move guys around and get them ready to rock for this year and have them be different chess pieces for the staff to use. And I think that's something that is really going to be intriguing to watch because as I look at this defensive line, I look at Malcolm Alcorn Crowder and Jonathan Jefferson as clear-cut starters. I look at Christian Davis, Kevin Allen, and Wu Spencer as that next 3. So you've got 5 right there along the interior. Then you can move around to Tavion Atkinson, maybe in pass rush situations. You have Tyrone Winslow back on campus for another year. You have Keith Doty and Dakota Dixon long-term. So there's more depth than people, I think, realize. And, just from my experience covering Randall Joyner's Ole Miss defensive line group, depth is hard to come by. That was an Ole Miss group that was really good as far as 2 deep. But, man, that was kind of it. They went 3 deep here, maybe just a little bit, kind of similar to SMU, like having a Kevin Allen to deploy or like at an edge spot, having Akil Washington, Marquise White, and Iris Singleton and things like that. It's just a different world. And it is kind of difficult to, put into words just how hard it is to build depth along the interior. That's quality, right? Like if SMU would have hit on, Eric Taylor last year as a flyer, or DeMarge Lewis would have done something, those obviously that would have been just kind of insane, but it was also a group that was definitely good enough already to do what SMU needed it to do. We know the story of the 2025 SMU defense and how it missed Jonathan Jefferson and how it missed Akil Washington off the edge. But also you look at some of the things that happened in the secondary that, just hurt as a whole, regardless of what the defense line did. So this group and how veteran it is, I mean, between the next 2 years, they're going to have a lot of guys that are playing serious snaps for SMU leave, but they will have had time to kind of restock in the future and things like that. And they've kind of done that, a couple of multi-year guys in Tavion Atkinson, Iris Singleton, and Christian Davis. So coming into the fold, that'll help for 27 with, Kevin Allen, Wu Spencer being back. But there's not much you really have to mess with in this front seven. I mean, truthfully, it's a great group. I think it's a group that can easily, be where it was last year as far as being one of the top run defensive, units in the country. And I think if you see this group stay healthy, you can then see all of the fun that Scott Simons might have been able to have this last year with guys like Akil Washington and others that didn't end up getting to play because of injury. So there's not much as far as goals that I need to see from that front seven. They just got to keep doing their thing and being kind of ready to go as they can be, kind of the cliche stuff. There's a lot more communicational goals that I want to see out of this SMU secondary as we get to watch. We'll get to watch a lot of spring ball. That's something that Rhett is great about with us. So keep that in mind. That is kind of it as far as some offseason goals that I kind of come into mind. There's some position battles that we'll go into as we get closer with Hayden Howerton, kind of breaking down each position by position group on that front. So keep that in mind. We're not, there yet as far as jumping into position battles on the pod. At least we'll do that with Hayden and some of our positional previews like we did going into the spring and kind of resetting things. But I do think, as a whole, we're seeing this SMU program, I think, see the next step as far as, okay, that 2025 class that they really feel good about, they now are going to step into some bigger roles this offseason. They're going to become some leaders, some returning players. That'll have to happen. And the same goes for some of these 2026. So when SMU goes into 2027, yeah, they'll be breaking in a new quarterback. There's no doubt about that. That'll be a really fun offseason. I've not had that'll be a fun offseason. So just from a following it perspective, but you're going to see those two groups really be at the forefront of what's next in this program. And so it's this really, really cool, I think, balance between veterans and even veteran newcomers with young talent. I mean, the roster breakdown is really interesting, kind of between how young some of the guys are and then the opposite side, how old some of the guys are, so to speak. So it's really, really interesting to watch this team come together. I think it's going to be a nice, talk about balance sometimes. I think there's going to be a nice balance here. Like Miami had Malachi Toney and Bryce Fitzgerald and some of those players. I think you could kind of see some of those stars start to emerge on SMU's younger side. That'll kind of be fun to watch them pair with some of the older guys that have been around and done some things and things like that. So that's kind of the offseason, a little bit of a preview, long-winded, 47 minutes. Kind of can't believe that. But it's a lot of fun. The offseason and talking season is obviously what I do. But it's a lot of fun to walk through. I mean, we could do podcasts on individual players. We could really do that. But it's fascinating to kind of walk through all the different angles for positions and goals and all those things. And look, we've got all off season. So I'm looking forward to doing that with you guys. But before we get out of here, do want to say on the recruiting front, and actually, let's do this. Let's go basketball first, because I think some people are going to be listening to this, trying to get this episode in before SMU basketball tips off against Louisville, 1 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. So big ESPN game. That comes right after Duke, Virginia Tech, I believe, on ESPN as well. 2 major league games for SMU. And just as far as watching those games, like, I'm excited to watch those. Just because I think Duke is rolling. I think they take care of business, but I was talking with James Fletcher on the All Access AM show we do on Thursday and was saying, could they finally break through? They're the home team, whatever, maybe. But SMU, this is a big opportunity for them. This is a quad 1 road opportunity. I think this would be SMU's first quad 1 road win if they got it. Could be wrong on that. But a really big opportunity for SMU here to get that done and move past that kind of thing that's holding SMU back a little bit. Let's see. Okay, yeah, their quad 1 win was Wake Forest. Just so they have that one. That was quad 1, not quad 2. So they do have a road quad 1 win, but this is a top 20 team on the road in terms of quad, in terms of net ranking. So this Louisville team is really good. One thing I do want to say in previewing this game is I think this is a game that I think SMU can get what it wants in the paint. And SMU, as far as points in the paint went against Duke, this is without Boopy Miller. So remember that. They got 6 points out of Smet Yigitolu. They got 23 out of Jaden Toombs. And we know Jaden, didn't score all those points in the paint or whatever, but this Louisville team got absolutely smoked Monday night on the glass. They got smoked in the paint. It was it was 42-10 points in the paint. And I think the talent level, obviously, at Duke is pretty insane with Patrick Gongba and Cameron Boozer. But it was such a stark difference, even with the return of Michael Brown and having Ryan Conwell, of course, for Louisville, that if SMU obviously is going to play a ticked off Louisville team of what happened, but man, if you can hammer it inside to Jaden Toombs, if you can get Samet kind of going again, at least on the rebounding, because I think as a rebounder, he's been better. He's been more aggressive. We could talk until we're blue in the face as far as some of the bunnies he misses. We know that. But he is doing a good job affecting some of these players. And I think, looking at Vangelis, Zugris, and Javon Hadley, this is a big opportunity for these SMU bigs to show that they can be relied upon even more than they have, because you can have BJ Edwards, who was the ACC Player of the Week this year. You can have Jaron Pierre Jr. going off, which he's been kind of ticking towards. And you can have a classic Boopy Miller game too. But you could shock the world if you get the type of play that SMU got at Duke from Samet Yigitolu and Jaden Toombs. Like, this should not be an environment that intimidates SMU. They've been there, done that. They've kind of been through the ACC ringer now. And the way Duke it kind of embarrassed Louisville in the second half in particular, that was something that I really held on to. Now, the question is, some of these great guards that they've got and some of these great talent with Michael Brown going up against Boopy Miller. And Michael Brown's, not a 6'5", 6'6" type of point guard, not a unicorn. He's in that 6'2", 6'3" range. So not a, Boopy Miller's going to give up probably 5 inches on him, but not an insane amount there. That's going to be a fun matchup. I think Boopy's going to be up to the task. And then you look at trying to defend Ryan Conwell as well. Man, BJ Edwards, Jaron Pierre Jr., I think you try to obviously stack those guys up. And, you try to do what Duke did to Pat Kelsey's team. And he said it best. He said, we got a butt kicked. It was a butt kicking. They got 47% of their misses and were plus 21 on the rebounding discrepancy there. And they imposed their will. That's what SMU, having watched the Duke Louisville game, I mean, that it's there for SMU if they show up ready to go. And this isn't a morning 11 a.m. tip. This is 1 o'clock p.m. Central Time. You'll get in there. You've been having a pretty chill week. School's canceled, this and that for SMU. Big opportunity here for the Mustangs, and especially they didn't play a game this week. Come out refreshed, ready to go. I think this is a big Boopy Miller game too. If he kind of can really run this offense to the highest level that he can, I think we could see SMU put up 90, 95 on this Louisville team and kind of get in that range. That is a high ask, but I also think SMU is going to give up what, they have a tendency to do defensively. I just think the difference could very well be that front court and the ability for SMU to really, I think, just challenge Louisville with the talent that SMU has in the front court. They just have to put it all together, but it's there. Like Jaden Toombs in particular, he's grown up in some of these games, not only this season for SMU, but he's grown up playing in high-level games with high-level stakes. And that's why you're seeing the maturity from him despite missing the time he did earlier this season. So I don't know if SMU ends up pulling this off, but I see the world and I like it. I like this matchup the more I've watched SMU this season and the more I've watched Louisville this season with and without Michael Brown. SMU currently favored by 2.5 points on BetMGM. So maybe they get this one done. This would be another signature win for Andy Enfield. This would be, I think I said this on the message board, or maybe I said this at another point, but if SMU gets this win over Louisville, this would kind of slam the door shut as far as barring collapse, this would kind of secure their positioning to land in the NCAA tournament. It would be a major league win in that regard. So really excited about watching that one as SMU takes on Louisville, 1 p.m. Central Time, ESPN. Really appreciate you guys joining us on the podcast. Do you want to close out with this? SMU's coaching staff is on the road. We are covering it all at ontheponyexpress.com. Make sure you guys subscribe to the website ontheponyexpress.com, and we will continue. We are going to get back into the membership YouTube channel world with Hayden Howerton doing Film Room and me doing some recruiting stuff behind there, just because building out a whole podcast and doing some of the things that we do in that regard with recruiting, we never want to give it away and then hurt what we've got going on at ontheponyexpress.com. But I can just say this, as far as the recruiting side of things, the dead period is coming. National Signing Day is approaching, and this coaching staff will be off the road here very, very soon. And the dead period begins February 3rd. So coming up, and it'll run till March 2nd. Actually, let's see. Those dates are from last year. But basically the Sunday before National Signing Day is the dead period. And so it is approaching rapidly. So yeah, this weekend, come Sunday evening, it'll be a dead period, and it'll be that way for a month. And then they'll get back at it with spring guys coming to visit, and then it'll be official visits before we know it. So SMU's been hitting the trail hard. They've dished out a lot of 2027 offers, but really they've also been doing a ton of national recruiting for down the line in 28 and beyond. So it's been fun to follow. There's been a million offers handed out, so there's been no shortage on the message board. We've dropped some tidbits on coaches on the road. We'll have some more information on workouts and kind of how those are going early on right now. But with that, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this Friday edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. Hope you guys are locked in, leaving us good ratings, reviews, and more. And I hope you guys enjoy SMU Louisville on Saturday. And we'll have your full coverage at ontheponyexpress.com. So I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody.
Follow us on your socials on X at SMU on 3 and on Instagram at on3SMU.
And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.